Hello and welcome to the ORCA podcast for our second episode covering what was Canberra Survivor 1. Looking forward to you chatting to you live and looking forward to speaking to you in the future from whoever listens this later on whenever they listen to their podcasts. We are into week 2 of the coverage of our 11 season rank down of all of the seasons of the modern LRG, and today in Australia, and today we're very, very fortunate to have a deep dive with the winner of Canberra Survivor 1, Jeremy. Really excited to break down his game. We talked about it last week on the recap episode. It was a fantastic game. Really interesting story, given he started off a bit at the bottom and then had to work his way back up. And of course, one of the best final tribal councils I think we can expect to see in this countdown. An incredible performance. It would be great to chat to him about. A little bit of housekeeping as always. Voting is presently up and will be for a couple of weeks for the awards for Canberra Survivor for the ORCA podcast. Get in there and vote for your MVP, the person you want to see again, and of course the all-important Bromelo medal, the most important award in LRG podcasting in Australia. Get in there and vote. And next week, as is usual with our format, it's the hottest program of our 4-episode format for a season. It is the tea party with the infamous Annabelle, and she will be getting all the hot goss, serving up all the hot tea with Hoppo, Ash, and Dom. I have specifically requested Dom takes his shirt off at some point. I really hope that he comes through with the goods. None of us have seen the rig enough. As much as I like to pause the moment, I can never get enough. So Dom will hopefully be on with the other two. And then finishing out our coverage, as always, will be the awards and a catch-up with myself and production to talk about what went into making this amazing season. And as mentioned last week, next week, we will be next month, December, the Christmas month, we'll be covering Backyard Season 3 Exile. So get binging now so we can be prepped for that coverage. Now, you're here today to hear from Jeremy, and you're here, as always, to probably hear from me. But what do I know about winning? I've never won shit, unless you count org, and orgs don't really count, let's be real. But so we need a real winner here to help us talk through Jeremy's game. And who better than La Madrina herself, the winner of Canberra Survivor Season 2, Ma. Welcome, Ma.
Hello, thank you for that welcome. Very sweet.
Are you watching the current season of Survivor 45?
Yes, definitely, yes.
Dee, it's not just the accent; it's the way she plays. Dee reminds me so much of you. Can you see that?
Yeah, I could definitely can. As soon as I saw her talking, at least I heard her, I was like, oh, she's Latina and she doesn't have to explain. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, she's a good comparison.
Not just because she's Latina and it's the accent. She's playing a dominant game as well, like you did. So it's very good to see that sort of comparison. Yeah. I'm sure.
Sure. Yeah, she's awesome.
Now I've got you in the last minute, but I'm so glad you're here because it's great to have another winner's perspective on a winner's game. And you being the second winner of Canberra, there's only 2 winners of Canberra that are known, of course, at this stage. Other seasons happening. I understand they're filming another season this week. So it's very, very exciting timing to be covering this. And without further ado, let me bring in the winner of Canberra Season 1, Jeremy. Welcome, Jeremy.
Hey, Chris. Hey, Ma. Thanks for having me.
Hello, Jeremy.
When did you cut the hair? Just out of
that was early beginning of last year, so January. It was a pretty big day for me, actually.
Yeah, big step.
Yeah, I felt like I lost all my powers. Like there was just didn't know who I was.
Well, and you don't know this secret, but Brad actually, last time I saw him, he had pretty long hair, so I think they swapped haircuts. Yeah.
So I decided to channel my inner Brad and go for the nice sort of schmick short hair. And then he flipped on me. He went he was going to be the long hair bro. So I missed out.
That's super interesting. Brad's got the long hair now. How's that going at the paralegal job? Do they into Brad's long hair there? Or is he no longer a paralegal?
It's good to have a good looking rooster around the office. So I think it's going really well. I think they need that male model looking type person. So Brad's he's killing.
So that's Brad.
I love it. Aston says that short hair Jeremy would have been the first boot. We always were, and I guess what we can talk to that at the moment. He was there, so he would know.
Multiple times.
Marcus says your hair's looking a bit untidy.
Thanks, Marcus.
I like the mo as well. Now, going into the season, tell us a little bit about, were you a super fan? Did you have any sort of game plan going in? What was you thinking when you got there on the day?
Yeah, so leading into it, I had a little bit of experience going to Survivor. I kind of knew a bit about the game, and I first basically fell in love with it. One day I had I used to live with Dan. Dan was a housemate of mine a few years ago, and I had like gastro one day, and I was like terribly sick or unwell on the couch. I said, Dan, do you have anything I can watch just as I'm sitting here on the couch just trying to like survive? And he said, oh, here's a USB. Gave me a USB, and on this USB was like season 1 through to like, I don't know what it was at the time. It was in like late 30s. He said, oh, here's some plenty of hours of viewing here for you. So I like basically started that, and he said, try this season out. It's a really good one. And then off I went, felt falling in love with it. And then just before I got into Survivor Canberra, I tried to watch during COVID season 1 through to, I think it was 40 at the time, to try and like do as much research and homework as possible. So I did my best to become a fanatic, but compared to the people that I met and have now played with, I've got a long way to go. Like I thought I was going to be like, oh, I've done a little bit of research. I've kind of studied this, and I'm going to try and, keep that a secret. Even if I did try and like convince people I was a super fan, they would be like, you've got nothing on us as a super fan. So yeah, I think I had a little bit of experience, but nothing compared to what I now know is actually decent experience. So with that, I started thinking about what perhaps I would try and do coming into my season. And I think you mentioned last week, Chris, I did talk about my injury. So I went from like I think I'll be like a bit of a physical asset threat. But then I had this knee injury, and I thought, oh, well, bugger, now I'm not going to be much of an asset. It turns out I wasn't an asset really in that physical stuff at all. I don't think I won anything. Like, I didn't contribute one bit except for that final final challenge to get into that final 4. And that's the only time I did like of any remote in the physical challenge. So socially,
I was going to say, it's very difficult to come in and play with a significant injury and play games like charades. It's a huge challenge.
Yeah, we had to go and crawl on the ground and be like crabs and stuff. Are you kidding me?
I don't know. I think winning challenges is really overrated. I mean, you really do not need to win challenges to win, as you and I can attest.
I think I would have liked to have been a little bit more competitive in the sense that I really felt like I had no control over any of those challenges, because I'm like outmatched in a lot of these, particularly with Kegan going in and as good as he is at almost everything. And I thought I'm a little bit stuck because I don't see myself achieving that immunity in order to have control of the game. So like for me, it was a little bit of it's a bit of a way out if you can try and get that immunity. But because I couldn't get that, I found myself a bit stuck, and I was like, oh man, I'm scrambling just constantly. So thankfully, I thought a little bit about a social strategy, and it ended up being the better way for me to play, particularly with that cast.
Yeah,
well, Aston just wants to point out that you and he never lost a point in charades. Like, I don't know. I fast-forwarded through that.
Yeah, I also think I think of all the winners that I've seen in LRGs, I would say you are the like social winner in my eyes. You really were like the epitome of like someone who is, their game is 100% like that really strong social game, like to the point that how you have people quitting just to leave you in the game. I think I think you did such a good job in the social game. Like I do think the physical, it's important, but I think social really gets you to the end.
Yeah, and that's something that I did learn a little bit more about, particularly as you watch the American Survivor. That what you're talking about there, Mara, is like that you can see that evolve, and that becomes the truth, particularly in those later seasons. Like the emphasis on that that individual who can supply and or like feed or like even the gatherer, like the hunter-gatherer sort of thing, doesn't really become much of a thing, considering that, you know, it's about Survivor, but as you said, the social stuff, it's way more important. So I was very fortunate that the people that I had connections with throughout, you know, they reciprocated in like their trust, and I think it sort of worked out for me. But yeah, I appreciate that, Mark. That's really nice words.
Well, we're talking about how social Jeremy was, and Jeremy did play an incredibly social game, but not quite at the start. So let's just talk about the very start, where he's almost the first boot. You've come in, and social friendly Jeremy doesn't appear yet. We've got a guy who's really trying to dominate all of the conversations he's in terms of who they should be voting out. You want to target Dom because apparently he's bad at challenges, when the challenge again was charades. So I don't think it's a fair assessment. And then you also were worried about physical challenges. And look, you can say what you want about Dom, but he was flexing his muscles literally as much as he could. Like, if it came to physical, he would appear to have had something to bring. And then equally, you're in other conversations with other people, and ultimately, you know, you're in this situation with Janine, and Janine's throwing out that you guys are like a tight two because she met you at some game night, and you're trying to diffuse that. You're on the back pedal, and you go into this first tribal council with a 3-3-2 vote against you. Now, you throw it on Emily and say, well, she just found the idol. She hasn't played it. Let's just get rid of her, which is a smart play. But when did you realize during this first vote how badly this had gone for you?
I felt like the general conversation was leading down to this quite a negative result for me. That was going to be like oh gosh, this is my worst case scenario here. I can't, like, I was trying to get in conversation, trying to control it, try to lead people away from my name, but it just wasn't working for me. So pretty early on, I discovered that there was this thought that Janine and I were like a really tight two. And although we'd known each other, or we'd met each other before, it wasn't as if we had sat down, you know, and talked strategy and discussed what we were going to do together. So I thought that
how
was
well
like,
did you know each other? How fair was this? How well did you know each other? It seems to range from you're the bestest friends that ever lived to maybe we met once at a game night, maybe.
Yeah, look, we only met once at a game night, but in saying that though, you know, we hit it off. We were good friends. No, but we were friendly at this games night, and that was the only time that I'd met Janine. So it just so happened that somebody had found out, or even Janine had mentioned it throughout like discussions throughout the game, and so that just stuck. And then people who needed a reason to throw my name out there, they found it, and that was the one. So I was a bit of a target straight away, and that was. Yeah, that happened pretty quick, and you sort of learn, geez, you got to start swimming because it's the deep end. it's pretty tough.
Yeah. I guess that really. Sorry, I was gonna say it really shows that like the winner, you know, like of the season can be determined by like a split second. Like, had you gone on that vote, one person changes their vote, it's a completely different season, and we have a different winner. So it just shows how much of like. Yeah, social, strategic, physical game, but luck also comes a lot.
That's it. I can think of, and I mean, for me personally, I don't know about yourself, but I can think of maybe at least 5 or 6 sliding doors moments where
Ma didn't get votes in her game. She just ran to the end.
That's true. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there was a clear winner the whole time. Yeah.
No, but I know what you see. I do have a lot of things that like had this gone this way, I would have. Maybe like gotten to the end and lost, or yeah, that's so funny. And it's really funny to me that you also were in a tribe with Janine, and then you know had like a bit of an alliance with her. And then I tried working with Grace, didn't really work out, and then you know maybe that's a secret, just align with Janine and Grace.
Yeah, that's right. This is like little crazy sort of coincidence going on there.
Did you feel that it was unfair? Maybe you had or did not have this information, and it'd be good to know. That you've got people targeting you because you and Janine went to a games night once when Kegan has his literal sister in the game, or Emily and Rose clearly have a long-term relationship based on their mutual friends in Melbourne. Like maybe that was not known to everyone, but it's a bit unfair that you get tagged with the Core Alliance brush.
That's very good point. And that was something that I think was mentioned. Is like, well, if we're going to talk like likely duos or very likely alliance members, let's talk that, or let's maybe like mention that these are the things. So I think that was an argument that I tried to put forward, and I think it just goes down to how well you or how good you are at selling that pitch. And Rose and Emily were very good at selling that I'm a bit of a threat because of my likely alliance with Janine. So I was losing to that pitch by them, and thankfully, like at that point in time when there was a even split and it was time to vote unanimously between Emily and I think even Brad mentioned, he goes, look, she's got the idol, let's just get rid of it, that's done for me. So it just again, it was like that split decision or that sliding doors moment.
That's really important. If she doesn't have the idol, do you think there's a chance that it's you that goes there?
Most definitely. I think, as I said, I wasn't well equipped with the terminology or even the pitch that Rose and Emily, because they were very good. They knew exactly what they were doing and they were saying, and I knew that from the very beginning. I was afraid of Rose, and I thought, man, if I'm going head to head against her, I think I might lose. And at that point in time, I found myself going head to head against Rose, and she was beating me. So I 100%, I would be gone.
And they were not wrong. I mean, you were the biggest threat in the end. So
that's right. Yeah,
Emily was right.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, they probably were saying that at that point in time for that short short-term win, but I don't know, maybe they saw something in me that I didn't.
They must have.
Well, as Mark can attest, if you play this game a second time, you have such an advantage and you're just in a much better position than the time you played the first time. And both Emily and Rose had played, before in one of these substantive games. So they had that advantage and they were using it to their advantage in that discussion and the way they wrangled the votes.
Definitely.
If we move on then to the second ep, how much damage control? You said it was a wake-up call. How much damage control? Did you immediately just reset your strategy? Did you take a different approach? How did you dig yourself out of this enormous hole?
Fortunately, coming out of that vote, like getting on the right side of it, then Rose sort of had to do a little bit of damage control, and she kind of approached me and came to me and said, oh, look, this is the way it sort of had to happen. Now I need to fight for my position in this tribe. And so we had a really good discussion, and then everything just started to fall in place for me that I had a really honest and very fun, friendly and very easy conversation with Brad. That's why him and I said, I think you and I are very similar in strategy. I really like the way that you conduct yourself and how you play. And we sort of said there, look, we could probably go a long way if we work together. And we had decided that was a pretty good way to strategically move forward. And then Aston and I, with even the charades thing, we were bouncing off each other. We're bonding so well. So I think just at that point in time, I just made this vote, and then I just had maybe a little bit more time to talk to people and therefore connect with those people. And then it just so happened, that the more conversations that could occur, the more I got to know, even Alex, understanding her and how she was going in that game as well. These conversations that were happening early on just set me up for the remainder of the game. And I'm grateful that, I just had that opportunity to be able to actually chat to them.
Yeah, I mean, I do think those blue tribe relationships ended up kind of being the backbone of your way to the end. Obviously, your relationship with Brad, but I think the key there was you becoming really close to Alex. I think she was kind of another big turning point in your game. So yeah, I think I think getting votes at tribal is never the end of the world. You can always use your social skills to get back into position. So yeah, I'm glad that you were able to get back into the middle of everything that was going on in the blue tribe.
That's right. And yeah, I think that's probably the biggest part of where my game sort of began, is that you get thrown in the deep end, you straight away that first tribal council. So you start to play and you start to find your feet. You have to find your feet really early. And I was kind of hitting that game type mentality quite early on. And yeah, I think that just sort of followed the rest of it. Whereas, the other tribe, they were chilling out the other side.
They're sleeping, finding love rocks. They're doing nothing.
Doing some yoga, I believe. Like it was
Yeah.
outrageous.
And they've got an easy first boot. Well, they sort of completely stuff up their votes with people doing random stuff. But, you know, someone's feeling very, very sick and sicker as they go. So they've sort of got like a safety net sitting there. Yeah. Going into your next vote, everyone thought the safety net was Alex because she just didn't seem to be that into the whole thing. And then you, with some very interesting foreshadowing for the edit, say you find some string and you throw out that maybe an idol was wrapped in it. Like you're correct, I guess, but how did you just go, this string is an idol? Maybe Alex has an idol. Like that seemed very and that's when you said
Sherlock Holmes
Sherlock Holmes. It was an incredible deduction, but not great management with Rose, because Rose is like, who's Alex voting for? And you're like, oh, she voted for you. Also, I think she might have just had an idol, and everyone, I think she knows we're all voting for her. So it's like, and Rose is like, what?
Yeah. Which is such a funny, that whole scenario, because I found this string and I thought, well, this seems out of place out here. And I feel like we didn't harp on it quite enough. Like I sort of mentioned it and we did, and it just didn't get discussed as if like, okay, this is definitely what's probably like, well, this is what's probably going to happen. Let's make this for certain, or like, can we decide? But yet there was still like quite a bit of deliberation and discussion about what we were going to do. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm like reading into this too much and I just need to relax a little bit. And then when it came to crunch time, I told Rose, oh, like you are the name that Alex is going to vote for. And then she was like, right, I'm not a fan of that. But I think somehow me being honest with Rose at that point in time was like, oh, well, I don't know, maybe Rose can like pop up in the chat and be like, no, you're an idiot. But she might have thought, okay, well, at least he's being honest with me. And I think maybe he is, rather than trying to be sneaky, he's actually kind of being like a pretty genuine person. So perhaps I can trust him. But yeah, I didn't really think of it as a I'm stitching up Rose here type. It was like oh no, I'm going to be honest with you type conversation.
Then Alex pops out the idol, pre-votes, says I'm playing this, and the votes, everyone switches their votes. Rose, I think, mouths Janine. Everyone gets on board with that. Did you vote for Rose or Janine in that one?
I went Janine. Definitely went Janine. As soon as Alex pulled out this, I was like, okay, so Alex is here to play. That's well done. Yeah. And then I looked at Rose, and then she just like I think just her quick thinking, and and even like convenience of me having with her and with an eye shot, looked at her and she just sort of eyed Janine and mouthed Janine. And I was like, okay, well that's the one, because at that point in time, I knew I didn't want to go head to head against Rose. I was like, if I can be with Rose, I'm probably better for it. So Janine was the vote, and then it worked out.
Yeah, and I think Rose would have been, and she was a good shield for you. Like, CK said she had played before, and I think that some people in the cast knew that she had played before. So I think that was great that you kept her around just to be a little shield for you.
That's right. Yeah, and I mean that could have gone either way, I think, maybe in some regards, but yeah, I think even Rose had foreshadowed that. She said, I've been in this scenario, if not exactly the same before, but a similar one. She said they're likely to throw a vote on me. So at that point in time, like, yeah, I think it was fortunate that I was paired with Rose in that swap. And
You're jumping ahead.
Yeah. We're jumping ahead.
Sorry, we'll go back to that. But obviously, did you ever see Janine at another games night? Did she forgive you for this vote out, or is she dead?
Yeah, look, we're still best friends.
Playing games all the time.
That's right.
Episode 3, it's a double tribal, and this is where you could pair up with someone for the challenge, and then 2 people would be immune, one from each tribe. And I felt that you were incredibly disadvantaged in this challenge if you were tall. I talked about it as a podcast. If you were tall and if you were not super slim, it was a huge disadvantage because the hoop wasn't super wide, and tall was like a longer. Who were you paired up with in this?
So we had there was a schoolyard pick, and Isaac said, "Oh, I'll go with that guy." And I think he called me Tarzan at the time, and I was like, "We are gonna nail this." I couldn't believe. I was like, 2 athletic blokes. I'm just gonna I could throw this maybe 2 times, and Isaac's gonna jump between them, and we'll get it done. And then I think you're right, because like our major disadvantage is that we didn't have a good enough strategy, and that we were overzealous in the way we threw it. So I think I threw it too far the first time. Isaac didn't make the hoop, and I was like, okay, I won't throw it that far. And then he sort of stumbled out of the hoop. I was like, oh no, we're coming dead last. And we ended up, I think, becoming like we were the worst on ground. It was a terrible performance.
And it's a bit of you didn't get an advantage there. A lot of people we've talked to, or they talked about it in the show, or it was in their comments when we did last week, use this challenge as an advantage to build a connection with someone. Or in Aston's situation, he was trying to get Kegan out by throwing the challenge, apparently. So either or, where Isaac was like the least strategic person in the game. So he just picked you because you like the look of you,
probably. I mean, that's the whole next level of thinking, which now I like understand that there's opportunities everywhere to like engage in strategy, engage in like some kind of forward thinking, and you really shouldn't sleep on those. I at the time was like so excited. I was like, yeah, you beauty, we're gonna win this, and I didn't really consider it to be anything more than just like a physical challenge that we should be successful at. But not to be.
And on this vote, where Aston goes, and we talked about last week how Aston was playing a very dominant game in the Blue Tribe for the first 3 votes, and he was playing like probably too big of a game, which is what happens here, where even his good alliance member Brad decides just to completely get rid of him because he doesn't want to be number 2 to Aston. He wants to be number 1. This is a really interesting vote in that you've probably gone from, and this is my read, and please correct me if I'm wrong, from being on the bottom, obviously, to having the opportunity to go a number of ways at this vote. Aston is an option, Rose is an option. You'd probably be voting with Alex, with Rose, who you seem to have now built bonds with, and Brad is also thinking about where you go from here. Dom's completely left out of this vote. Doesn't votes the wrong way. He thought they were voting for Rose, and that if it wasn't Rose, it'd be you. But he's completely missed the agenda that's come up with this alliance with you, Brad, Alex, and Rose. How did this really come together? It's such a change up from the start of the show.
It was, and it absolutely was an unexpected one. And I think even being adaptable in those conversations, but also as the game is played in front of you, I think is such an important thing. Like, you have to be kind of open to the fact that what you think was what you're predicting is like going down this narrow path that can change in any couple of seconds. So for me, I was like, up until maybe a conversation with Rose and Brad, where they said Aston is running the show and he's doing it really well, I was all team Aston. I was like, Aston is my boy. It still it breaks my heart a little bit to talk about the fact that I went against him, but I just sort of knew that if we don't strike now, we're going to let Aston go, and he's just going to have this massive momentum behind him. And even I could see it, like, I was in my inexperience in the game, you could just tell that was a bloke that if you let him like get too much protection, too much power, he's going to be untouchable. So with that, I had to go with probably what I think was the smarter decision. Is probably what my brain was telling me, but definitely not my heart was telling me. And Brad and Rose said we should do this now, because otherwise we're going to fall short of a lot of things because of Aston. And I think, it turned really quick for me. I didn't think I was going to be voting Aston, and then the more we'd sort of discussed it, the better that decision was sounding. And then Alex came in as well, because that was a pretty. She was also on our mindset that Aston is king.
And why was Dom left out of the vote?
That is a good question.
How dare you, first of all?
Yeah.
Not just, and also the Aston vote. We got another winner in the chat here. He's sad for Aston, Sam Green. This goes back to the hoop challenge. Hoppo said that he and Ash were screwed. Just in my comment about the sort of people at disadvantage. Because he's Dom. That's why we left him. Did you think he was going to spill the beans to Aston?
I think I did. I hadn't quite figured Dom out at that point in time, and so talking to him, I was always a little bit cautious and maybe a little bit hesitant being completely open, only because I didn't know exactly what was going to occur after I'd had that conversation with him. So I think when I spoke to Dom, I was like, well, what are you going to do? He said, oh, I think it's going to be Rose. And I said, yeah, you beauty, let's do that. So I just kind of let him take the rein on that conversation and let him dictate that, because I think to say anything on the contrary would get him kind of like hopping about and trying to figure everything and probably go to Aston and say, oh, look, they're coming after you. And that would have blown up my game entirely. Like Aston would have had the power and he would have been able to convince everyone to vote me out. So, I think Dom was an unknown entity at that point in time.
Yes,
and still is. Nah, just
it's a smart play. It's a smart play. Don't need his vote. Don't know what he's going to do with it.
Yeah.
You're making a big
on the other hand, like had you been swapped with Dom, maybe he throws you under the bus. So it's always tricky balancing that, like including someone because they're going to spill the beans, or do you want to piss them off?
Yeah. Absolutely. And it could have gone back to bite me. And I can think like a little bit further into the game where even just not being completely honest or putting a vote on someone ended up being like someone's reason to go after you, later in the game. So there's plenty of moments there where like it could have backfired on me, but happened to just be fortunate.
But it didn't.
Yeah, that didn't.
Ashton also mentioned that he thinks Brad planned on telling Tom, but just
Brad is but it's just so random, I was really surprised to see Brad vote for a man for a change. So just kidding.
Yeah.
We go to the swap that we were very keen to get to, and you must feel incredibly unlucky that you've just worked your way up, and then you've got Rose, but you've been swap screwed. You're down 3-2 in this option. You could be on the other side with 3-3, and like Ash is willing to just flip and make moves. You were in a really unfortunate situation where you landed. Did you think I'm in a lot of trouble here, or did you think I'll just get to work and I'll see what I can do, or sort of both?
I knew that we were in a lot of trouble. We had basically no control in that scenario whatsoever, even including the challenge. The challenge where I thought, with who we had, Kegan, myself, and even just the players that we had, like surely we could be able to pull out this and pull out an immunity and or tribe immunity and get away with being in the minority of a swaps group. But Kegan was ahead of that. He knew exactly what he was doing, and so we didn't end up getting in a controlled position. So we went back to the tribe and the camp, and we came up with a plan. We said, all right, let's just rally as much as we can. We're going to stick together and we're going to try and just find a crack and just keep on opening it until hopefully it all completely blows up. And I think we did a little bit of convincing, but I think the old red, they just stayed strong. And even though I'd sort of said to Kegan, like definitely Ben's going to come after you. He threw a vote on you, the tribe, the vote before, and he's going to come after you again. And he's like, oh yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Let's vote Ben. And then so he sort of like convinced me that that's what was going to happen, sold me up the river, and then it didn't end up. So thankfully, it ended up being like it was a bit of fun. It was good fun to try and talk to so many people and do some convincing, but it didn't quite work out for Rose and I, but namely Rose.
Why did you think they targeted Rose over you?
Well, she mentioned it. She knew that votes were likely to going to come her way after they do like the 2-2-2 and then do a unanimous decision on Rose. I think they saw her as a big threat, and I agree. Like I think I identified Rose as a big threat mostly because of her ability to talk reason to you and convince you on like what her plan was probably the best way forward. And that was probably the part that I like latched onto initially and be like, yeah, her plan's like really good. The way that she conducts herself is really clever, and her ability to maneuver in the game was really good. So I saw it, and I think a lot of other people saw it as well. So for that, fortunately, she seemed to be a bigger threat than what I was at the time.
Kegan would have had a pre-existing relationship with Rose, not just from playing Melbourne Survivor 1, but, I think that game sort of arose for some of the players from their sort of shared social connections. I'm pretty sure that Liz knew Kegan before he played in Melbourne 1, so I'm sure Kegan would have known Rose as well. It was interesting, and we saw this actually throughout this game, other than perhaps yourself and Janine, the tightest pair that ever came into an LRG. That a lot of these people that didn't know each other that well, or did know each other quite well in real life, didn't seem to want to use that. In fact, they wanted to actively work against it. Do you think that was part of Kegan's thinking, as opposed to working with someone he actually knows in real life?
Well, yeah, it might have come down to, if Kegan is, let's just say Kegan's best shot at probably playing this game is the fact that if he was unknown, so the more known people in the game maybe is more of a threat to him. So if he is an unknown person, or the people don't know much about his strategy and who he is, it probably works out better for him perhaps. And I guess, knowing what potentially Rose can pitch against him, saying like, I've seen Kegan play this before. He's good at this. He's successful at doing that. You need to watch out for him. Like, there's probably like a little bit of a kryptonite component there. And by removing Rose, you might remove that potential of someone coming at him pretty hard.
What did you know of Kegan? Because at this time, in still current time in LRG history, he is the only person to have played 3 times in the 11 seasons that are currently released. And this was the 3rd time he was playing after a very, very, very good game in Backyard Season 2. What was known to the players generally, and what did you know about him?
I knew that he was good at this game, and mostly in the sense that of his ability to do the challenges. I think he was either a part of constructing or helping design challenges for one of the previous. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there you go. So I knew that about him, and then generally he was damn good at charades. I knew that about him, and and I knew that he was a big player and quite a clever thinker. So I probably didn't understand the gravity of exactly who he was, but I was getting there in the sense that I knew that he was a pretty dominant type player.
And you said at the final tribal, which this was a great answer, by the way, with all your fantastic answers at the final tribal, what was the move you didn't make that you should have made? You said that you should have put a vote on Rose here, as opposed to voting with her, in case they were you thought they were doing the split. And if you throw the vote on her, then in case you're the one that goes on the revote, you've set yourself up in a situation. Was that something that you actually later thought, man, why didn't I do that? Or was that just a good answer you came up with at trial?
It was definitely something that I'd thought about, particularly when you sort of reflect upon where was I in control of the game and where was I not. And that was a part where I had some control by putting a vote, which I did. I took a risk in the sense that if just in case we'd somehow convince Kegan to go for Ben, I didn't want there to be an opportunity where I vote Rose, but Rose and Kegan vote Ben. We could have got rid of Ben, but then Rose ends up going. And I don't think that's that was something that was potential, and I didn't want that to happen. So instead I was like, look, I will vote with Rose, even though I think strategically it was a pretty silly decision, taking out the power that I do have, which is the one vote, to make sure it does go on Rose to be my competitor in that vote. It was probably technically a silly move not doing that, but at the end of the day, I just didn't want to see like a Ben not going home where he could have, if that makes sense.
It's a very sad moment for Rose. She was right. She does know what this is like. This is exactly the same outcome that happened to her in Melbourne Survivor 1. She was 5th out. She was just before the merge, and she was swap screwed into a tribe where it was only 2 of her and the other side had the majority numbers. So you can't imagine the bad luck to be in that situation.
No, that's uncanny.
You don't really need to do much in the next episode, because you guys don't go to tribal and we'll be heading to merge. Is there anything that you want to talk about Jeremy's pre-merge game that we haven't covered?
Not really. I think we established that. I think the social game was really what kept you alive. I mean, you survived to very narrow votes. Yeah. I just want to know: did you go home to sleep, or did you camp out? Can you tell us about the? I think a lot of people know about the infamous overnight experience, but tell us about it.
That overnight experience, like, there was a good thing that nobody stayed, because what was the state of that riverbed and everything around it was completely wiped out and different when we came back the next day. So thankfully nobody stayed. I went home and I had slept in my bed, and then got up the following morning and just rocked in, pretty well rested.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the first controversy then of the merge. Talk about being rested. Isaac Gate. There appears to be a number of different thoughts as to what occurred. Of course, we were told on the broadcast that he had started feeling unwell. It was in the time that COVID was very, very at the front of everyone's minds, and he took a respectful move to everyone else in the game to step aside and make sure he didn't make anyone sick. I thought, what a fantastic guy Isaac is. In the comments last week, multiple people from this season put forward, no, he went to his cousin's party and, didn't show up the next day because he was, hungover, partied too hard. His heart really wasn't in it. Not surprising. Where do you sit on Isaac Gate? Hungover and self-orientated, or selfless and COVID affected?
What did Dan say? Just remind me what Dan said.
What's the company line here?
I spoke to Dan about this offline, and Dan says he believes Isaac, but he also says he's way too trusting of a person.
Well, I think more in terms of the game, were you like kind of was a part of you like a little bit happy that a member of the Red Tribe wasn't there anymore? Because you guys went into the marriage without the numbers.
That's right. So, whatever happened to Isaac, I was grateful that a number was dropped, because, in anything, as soon as a number goes, your odds improve. They lose a number, they lose a bit of power. I think, again, not that it was maybe too paramount in my game, I don't think, but it definitely made that easier, to move forward without having that extra number. So again, a bit of a sliding doors moment, probably not as influential as others, but still.
I mean, I don't want to argue it's a really big one, because as we'll discuss now, this vote coming up at the merge, it's like blue versus red deadlock, and then two people switching. We'll get into it, but I do think is Isaac there? He's just voting probably like how Ash tells him to vote, and what's stopping the Kegan and his crew from just steamrolling the Blues.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree. And, and my alliance, my core alliance member being Brad, if he goes at that point in time, I caught up with him after that vote, and he gave me a lot of information. We kind of conversed a bit. So with that being probably a big difference, in my game, you're right.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're spot on, Mara, except, and I that would be my read as a viewer, that Isaac's he's not going to be equipped for the level of strategy that happens from this point in the game. But equally, in the first vote, he just voted for his best ally, Ash, for no reason. So God knows what he's actually going to do when he gets in the voting vote.
Maybe we were robbed from a chaotic king, the true ORCA of this. This show.
Ash is my best ally. I'm going to vote for her and then tell her about it and give her no real reason about why I did it. And that's my strategy.
I love it. I love playing. You need those players. I think a good player can navigate those kind of personalities, and it's hard, but you can't just deal with robots all the time.
God help fucking Isaac.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can get in this vote. It's a really it's a huge vote, and I guess the first thing I would want to say is the edit did a significant job of making us feel like that it wasn't tribal lines, and then you get there and it is tribal lines. Is that the edit, or was there a genuine feeling that there could be a consensus vote, or that there really wasn't red and blue and someone else might go, a Ben might go, or a Charlene might go, as was being discussed? What was the real vibe when you were there?
Well, this is for the 222 vote, you mean? Is that what you're referring to?
No, we're in the merge now.
The merge.
Now the merge?
Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. Going to merge. I felt like because like old Red or Bimbiang, I think they were old Bimbiang, because I think they had a lot of strength. I felt like they were going to stick to tribal lines. That Gadali were probably the ones that were maybe scrambling a little bit, and so we sort of tried our best to blur the lines a little bit. But I felt like they made the lines like quite firm, that it was still blue versus red, and I got that sense mostly through conversation as well.
Mm-hmm. And was there anyone particularly in the red tribe that you felt like you could start working with at that point?
Yeah, I'd sort of thought that Ben, even though I just voted for Ben, I thought like Ben was like and he was the probably the biggest threat that I hadn't quite understood yet. And so when having conversation with him, he was probably the person maybe I should have stayed away for a little bit longer to try and understand, because I felt like when you get too close to somebody with so much power or so much potential, that if you get sucked into that vortex, then you probably get eaten alive. Like being not on Ben's radar would have been the best thing for me. So I thought I was going to try and work with Ben. I thought he would have been a good because I had such balanced and such easy conversation with him. But little did I know that he was playing chess and I was playing checkers. So
but he did want to work with you, and he did keep you in. Even though you weren't voting together that often, he was never wanting to target you, which is an asset that got you through further in the game.
That's right. So you go, Mark.
No, I'm just saying, Jeremy was constantly coming after his number one girl, Charlene. Which is kind of ironic. I actually forgot how many times you actually voted for Charlene, and then it's kind of ironic that she voted for you to win.
That's right.
But I think it's interesting. I think Ben. I mean, I can't speak for Ben, but if I know Ben, I know that he probably saw you as a good shield for him, because I think he knew eventually he would be exposed. And I think that's a really good play on him to pair up with you and Brad, or just you.
Yeah, and I felt that because even though him and I had so many conversations where I thought we're on the same wavelength, I think Ben voted for me a couple of times in a row, and he was so good, and I was like, oh, you voted for me again. What was up with that? And he goes, oh, because of this reason. And he sort of threw it out there so nonchalant and so relaxed. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that sounds reasonable. And then I would just drop it, and then he would do it again. And I was like, oh, okay, well, he's doing it
again. And
I
actually think this part of your personality is really what in my eyes, really got you, because someone who maybe say a really, really big fan of Survivor, who travels to Adelaide and leaves his children behind to play Survivor, you betray him like that, he's not gonna come back and be pretty chill about it. I think the fact that you are not the super, super, super fan, and you're more of a chill personality, kind of inadvertently allowed you to, be okay with being voted for, and then, work with Rose and then work with Ben and keep going and keep those relationships intact.
That's right. And I think, that's good point. And I think the noting on that, being open to different perspectives and understanding where they were coming from, rather than being super, defensive about, okay, well, you voted for me, clearly you hate me as a person and clearly you want me gone. It's okay, well, if you can explain to me why you did that, which Ben did really well, he, rather than pushing me away or him and I sort of fighting, he sort of was able to bring me back in. So, and that was technically, I think, a skill that I had learned from Ben at that time. I was like, okay, well, this is a good way to talk to someone, particularly that open dialogue. That I learned that along the way, and I think that was something that probably helped me out as well. But he was particularly good at bringing you closer, only to vote for you again.
To vote for you over and over again. Yeah.
I don't agree with any of this. If someone in your alliance doesn't vote the way they're supposed to, doesn't matter if they don't even vote for you, or they just fuck up their vote. You torch those motherfuckers and you yell at them until one of them accepts that it was them that voted wrong, so you can just torch them and move on solo like I did. This is the way you play the game, people. None of this friendly nonsense. Anyway,
that's fair enough.
The question is, do you want to burn big or do you want to win? You know, these are the options.
Yeah.
That's right.
Who needs $200? Am I right?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, let's get to this, the merge vote. One of the, I think the best merge votes we're probably going to, like, merge votes are always good, but this one is pretty fantastic.
Mhm.
Couple of controversial calls that I'd like your read on, Jeremy. Firstly, most controversial was Dom taking off the shirt disgusting. Disgusting.
Wouldn't describe.
Alex said.
I understand that perspective on it, and for me, it wasn't disgusting necessarily, because now I look back on it and be like, what a legacy that Dom has given us. We have the shirt off and the croissant, so I definitely wouldn't describe it as disgusting. Was it entertaining? Yes. Did it like end up blowing up that vote a little bit? Yeah, it did. But no, I wouldn't say disgusting.
Well, wait, was the disgusting move? What? Oh no, I'll poll you both. You know, you were there, you weren't, but you know, we got an opinion from people last week. Was the disgusting thing the way he was behaving towards Charlene in particular, or was it his actual rig that she was calling this?
Nah, Dom's pretty rig. I wouldn't say he goes to the gym. That's not the disgusting part. I think
it was the behavior.
I think if I know, I met Alex a little bit. I think the behavior. I think the sore loser. And I know Dom maybe regrets blowing up at that time, but I think for Alex, she's a teacher, and like for her, she probably thought Dom was just throwing like a bit of a tantrum, and you know, she's used to probably dealing with smaller children who would react more often in that way. So I think that's why she was like, you know, like naughty Dom. I'm gonna switch my vote now.
I love Dom here, and I think I don't mind him taking the shirt off. I also like where he says, "You're all fucking snakes, and I hate you and love you." I think that's nice. I feel he goes a bit hard on Hoppo on the way out, who actually said for him. Like, I know he didn't have that information.
Yeah, I think that's hard on Hoppo. Yeah, that situation. I think, you know, they were like Jeremy and Janine. They were really close friends coming in. Maybe not as close as Jeremy and Janine, but no one is.
Best friends.
And I think that was in the moment, like I have been brought it out, and in the moment you're just feeling, if you're an emotional person like me, your emotions get heightened and you're not thinking straight. And I'm sure Dom just felt betrayed for the fact that, you know, he went out and he wasn't sure where Brendan fit, and you know, and I also think he very quickly kept, you know, thought about what he was saying, and that's what he added, like that. But I love you, and then
imagine if when Janine went out, Jeremy, she said you were a fucking snake and she'd have words with you the next game's night.
She probably did.
She's like, it would turn the next game's night to a pretty sour event, I reckon. It would.
Yeah.
Like, damn it, Janine, we're going to move in together. Damn it.
All right. Well, the more controversial call I want to make is the production decision to not abide by Survivor standard rules and allow Brad to use his extra vote again on the revote. What the fuck?
No, this is my biggest qualm with this season. There's another decision that I'll bring up later on, but I have, like, you know, even when I play like games with friends, I always make sure to, before we play the game, that's the one rule that I always make sure we're clear on, that you can't, extra votes should always carry on to the next vote.
Unless you were the person who got voted for, then you don't have a vote.
Even then, if I was saved by the rule not being right in my eyes, I would actually not, that wouldn't sit well with me. So I'm with Brad. I stand with Brad. His vote should have counted.
Did you have any thoughts on this at the time, Jeremy, or had your Survivor binging not got to the point where you were, you know, all across these sorts of intricate rules?
Definitely the latter. I wasn't across this intricate rule. All I had thought at the time being like, how is it possible that we've gone? Because I thought as soon as like the Dom thing happened, I thought we've lost this completely. But then it was again an even split, and I was still racking my brain to figure out what's occurred there, and how is it that what I thought was going to happen, like Alex, I knew that was definitely going to vote Dom, but then how did we get one back onto Charlene? And so I was sitting there just trying to scratch my head. But yet, sure enough, all of it was unfolding, and probably all the viewers were like, "Oh no, doesn't seem quite right. So yeah, I was a little bit naive in that moment. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
And if
another
he does
moment of
have his-
chaos.
Well, here's an interesting one for you. If they do play it that way, and then it comes out 4-4 on the revote, is that going to Rocks?
I don't think Hoppo is going to Rocks.
So in that scenario, Dom, Charlene, Ben, and Kegan would all be immune because Ben had played his idol. So Rock draw would be between you, Jeremy, Brad, Alex, Hoppo, Ash.
I mean, I don't know.
I can't see Ash or Hoppo going to Rocks.
Yeah, I don't. I think Dom goes in this. Charlene. I don't know. Would you guys gone to Rocks, Jeremy? Were you?
You pushed it. What do you think?
You and Brad
Yeah.
gone to Rocks for Dom? I don't think so.
No, I don't think I would have. Given I think where we were positioned in the game, I don't think that was a necessary risk. I don't think.
So it would have been the same outcome then. So the extra vote play isn't the end of the world because it's the same outcome.
I agree. I think it would have been the exact same outcome.
Yeah. It's just not what Dom wants to hear, but
yeah. Well, you want to hear that it doesn't, that the rule non-application didn't impact your result. You'd rather than it did impact your result. Hoppo says here, sad face here. He no longer even has chicken. Sorry. Ash said Dom and Hoppo have beef. And Ash said we no longer even have chicken. It was the demise of the Hoppo and Dom besties. We'll tune in next week to the tea party where Ash will be there to mediate the disputes between Hoppo and Dom and reunite the two as the bestest.
Can I just say it's a bit of a crime that Ben is not coming to this tea party? I think Ben invented tea, so yeah, maybe ask Annabelle to extend an invite there.
We can have a third person. We can have 4 people on. There's no reason not. Should we get Ben on?
Definitely. I think you have to have Ben in this.
He is the MVP. It's not really the episode for the people that are good at the game. It's more for the people that are just going to say shit. But Ben is probably both, I guess.
Yeah.
He could definitely step up. I reckon he could.
Okay, so that's the merge vote. We go into Ep 7, and we get the
split tribes.
The double split. Yes, the split tribes. Thank you. And this is a great split for the Kegan group. And I like how you're wandering over there, just trying to make sure that your boy Brad is safe and that Kegan goes. But did you feel your vote? You're over there, you're trying to get the Kegan. Let's get into your vote with the the emotional moment of the season. We've gone from the high octane power, vitriol moment of the season to this super emotional moment with you and Alex, where Ben masterfully. We were debating this last week, but he masterfully coordinates this to get the outcome he wants. It's actually incredible. But Alex just self-sacrifices for you. How was that for you in the moment?
How are you so good at the game, Jeremy? That was your secret.
I would like to say that was my masterful manipulation of an individual, but no, that I think that comes down to Alex's heart. Mostly being completely torn about what she needed to do and what she wanted to do. And so the self-sacrifice was the only option for her, because otherwise it would be, going against 2 people, which she ended up having a good relationship and conversation with. So I think for her, it was a pretty emotional moment. And then that therefore impacted me on how I perceive the game. It's sort of oh yeah, we're all rocking out. We're all just in it just to play a bit of a game. But I think at that point in time, it became apparent that, the interactions that you have with these people is actually quite important, because whether you intend to see them again or whether you don't, they're still human, and you still want to have you still want to walk away and have a connection and being able to enjoy yourself. So to see Alex go through that and then do what she did was very shocking for me. Became quite surreal. Only because even in my inexperience in the game, I knew that just wasn't a thing. I was expecting to be voted out a couple of times. I'd started to get up and be and then Alex said, no, I'll vote for myself. I knew that was unheard of. So I was saddened that I couldn't do more at that time before that vote, Alex and I were hunting like crazy. We were talking about, okay, this is what we've got to do. We've got to go hunt for an idol. We have to get this in order to save us. We've got to do something. And so we went.
The clue was the clue was available at this time, I believe, about the water.
Yeah, something about the water and somewhere in that general vague area. So we knew that it existed, and that was our the only thing that could save us. So we went and did that, and we just didn't come away with the result. So going back to tribal council, I thought that it was inevitable that I was going, as I was pretty down, and then it took a very big turn that was unexpected to me.
How much do you think the previous vote contributed to Alex going? Because obviously, when in the Dom vote, she's pretty emotional. You know, she like kind of doesn't lash out, but you know, she has a response to Dom's actions. Do you think at the point Alex was a bit like over it, like it's raining, all these people are taking this game way too seriously? Obviously, I don't believe she was like a big fan of the game, and then she's surrounded by these people who like Dom, like Kegan, who are like super fans, and they're taking this really seriously. Do you think that like the previous experience had kind of took a toll on her and then led her to be over it?
Perhaps that could have been a factor in the sense that, you know, was she having as much fun as what had perhaps she'd intended, and maybe not. But I think quite the biggest, more important point I think there is that in every moment that you see Alex conduct herself and maneuver throughout this game, she stays very true to her, she's got a lot of self-respect. She has a very strong moral compass, and she stays true with that the whole way. So mentioning that Dom vote, even though she probably knew that voting for Dom wasn't exactly what we had discussed at that point in time, because this is what our plan was, and we wanted to make sure that, you know, we had the numbers coming out the back of that. But as soon as she got the sense that she didn't approve of or like what Dom was doing, she said, "No, game aside, I want to vote him out because I don't agree with that behavior." So there you see a very firm stance about what she, you know, believes as to be like a proper way to conduct yourself in any setting, let alone being like a social or in like a game setting. So she stood for that. And then following the next vote, she stood for another sense of like a strong sense of moral, is that she didn't want to vote for Charlene, and because she had made that really strong connection with her, and she said, "I'm not going to vote for you." And then her and I had played the game like pretty closely at that point in time, and she said she didn't want to vote for me. So straight away, again, we see Alex in her moment of like heroism in a way that, game aside, like why would anybody?
And she can't vote for Ben. Yeah, she's not like she can vote for Ben. Yeah,
that's right. So, you know, she throws the game aside. She's like, what can I live with, and what after this game, what can I be happy with for myself? And I believe that she did what makes sense to her, and that is, you know, falling on her own sword so she doesn't compromise her integrity about what she had established and what done before. And, you know, and I think credit to her. The game itself was kind of tough with the conditions and, you know, the way that it was played, but Alex stayed Alex all the time. Like there was you knew exactly who she was, and she was a bit of a hero, I think, in our season.
I think everything you said is absolutely right. And I think the one thing that maybe she didn't quite get is that she wasn't really choosing between you and Charlene. She was choosing you and herself. And no one would really like begrudge someone for choosing themselves over another person in Survivor. Like that's the position Ben had put her into with his sort of masterful plan. And I don't think she really appreciated that was the choice. And I'm not saying she still wouldn't have made the same choice, but I agree with you that her arc took her here, and this is the X that she wanted for herself. And she was happy to not vote out you or Charlene. But she really didn't want to vote for Charlene, you know?
Absolutely.
And she had done it though, obviously. I think she felt bad about even putting her pen on the piece of paper, you know, to write her name.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think, as you mentioned, that Ben kind of put us all in a bit of a corner. And so the only way that Alex knew how to get out of that corner is just to blow out the back wall and just be like, well, I'm going to do what I need to do, and I'm going to walk that way. So she did that by falling her own sword.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that took Ben by surprise. I saw the video, and I think Ben, who's a big fan, he was in a position where I have no incentive to change my vote because I'm immune, so I wouldn't even go to rocks. So he thinks he's got Alex cornered. Finally, he's gonna get Jeremy out. This big thread. And Alex kind of thwarts, and I think this is where like a really big factor of why also Ben loses, why he doesn't make the end, because maybe someone like Alex would have been easier to that Charlene Alex connection. He gets the 3 going, something like you and Jeremy are not, you and Brad are no longer a thing. I think this is where Ben kind of it's like one of the first little death he has on his way to being voted out.
It's a great call.
Absolutely.
Your connection with Brad ended up biting him in the ass quite badly, really. So you're absolutely spot on, Ma. That and his ideal scenario would have been you and Brad were swapped in this situation, and I think Alex just would have probably voted off Brad without that much of a concern. She just had that connection with you. I'm not saying she didn't have a connection with Brad, but it didn't seem as strong as the one she had with you.
Yeah, I think what happened was that Ben wasn't counting on someone, and I think this is the trickiest part of Survivors, remembering that not everybody will think or react the same way as you. So Ben thought it's so logical. She's gonna vote Jeremy out, and he never thought, I think, that Alex could just quit, and she did.
Exactly. It's never happened ever. Keith almost did it once, and then he sort of sat down and reconsidered his options.
I think that was a different scenario, but
so we'll go on to episode 8, and you're very grateful for Alex's loyalty, you tell us, and Brad's also impressed with the loyalty. Everyone's impressed with the loyalty. Touchy subjects. Amazing outcome for you. You don't get a single answer. You're not too good.
That's the best.
You're just right in the middle.
And I think that's like the biggest telltale sign that you're the winner there. Brad's too big of a you have to be right in the middle. Brad's too much of a threat. Hoppo is not looking great.
Let's talk about this. At this point, Brad is said he's calling the shots. He deserves to win. I'm not saying Brad wasn't a deserving winner, and we know he goes into the final tribal with the inside track, but I don't see from the edit why his game is so out in front of everybody else's. Why is Ben not getting these answers? Is Ben that under the radar? What can you tell us about Brad's game at this point that really is standing out so strongly?
I think being so close to Brad, I understood a lot about his game, and it was kind of funny that him and I had a lot of important, not a massive amount of dialogue, but important conversations where him and I looked at each other. He sort of mentioned what he had planned, and I said, that sounds good. This is what I can contribute, or this is how we can maybe maneuver that together. And I said my plan, and we said, yeah, that's good to go. So I understood a lot about his game. So therefore, I recognized that he probably was perceived as the one that was, controlling a lot, doing a lot of conversation. So to me, that was no surprise. So I guess what other people saw, and what I was very much involved with, was that his strategy and his ability to pop up and contribute, I think his timing was really good in conversation, perhaps maybe the best way to put it. He was able to swap a conversation around to be like, yep, no worries, that's a good idea. Have you thought about this? And then that way that he could plant that seed and therefore create a bit of a plan on his idea was probably the one that a lot of people agreed with. And so eventually, when you sort of do that a number of times and it comes to touchy subjects, maybe it's just Brad's voice always in the back of everyone's head being like, oh my God, all I remember hearing is how good, or all these ideas that Brad has had and how well he's playing. So hence everyone wrote his name down. So for me, I understood that he was going pretty dominant. And I think because of his style of play, maybe that wasn't quite obvious on camera. However, being a part of a lot of conversations, I think everyone was pretty spot on. He was doing a lot at that point in time. Ben, credit to him, he was dominant as well, but in a way that was different to Brad. I think Ben had his core alliance, or group of people that he was working with and probably had a lot of meaningful conversation with, where Brad was working a lot of people, I think.
Yeah.
on this vote, you get to go on a nice little reward with Brad and Ben, the three powerhouses, and you leave Ash, Hoppo, and Charlene back at camp to talk about their fate. Ash decides she needs one of the threats to go, the three that went on reward. But you and Brad managed to flip over Hoppo. Finally, the Hoppo Ash clash occurs. He votes for her here. You flip him over. We don't see, in my view, too much in the edit of how that came about. Was that a plan that you and Brad worked up with Brendan?
We could identify that Brendan was playing a really, really good middle game. And I think he was a lot of the time like that, not necessarily free agent, but he was like that pivotal vote in what I identify as voting blocks. And so when we sort of thought, all right, we need Hoppo on this one. And I was fortunate to have a bit of time with him, both under like the gazebo in the pouring rain. And then as we were, I think, at a challenge as well. Him and I, it was kind of funny. We didn't have much time, but we got to know each other pretty well. And we like built this rapport, which ended up being quite a bit of trust, because later he voted with us, and I really liked sort of being with him and hearing his opinions and hearing his way of what he wanted to do in the game, and a little bit about what he wanted as a result. And he was pretty stoked to be exactly where I was, and I found a lot of comfort in the sense that he's just a bloke that really enjoyed playing this game and where he was. So him and I just chat about that, how good's being here, how good's having a bit of fun. He was telling me he was trying to like inception this word called mungin. So he created this word mungin, and it's like it's a conversation I remember so clearly because it was such a good one. I love it so much. But he was like, I reckon we can throw in a word and we can coin this phrase mungin. And I was like, mungin sounds good as. And he goes, yeah, and it means tops, like the best. If something's good, it's mungin. And so and like that's just like a little credit to.
He's
well, I think it's a big credit again of your mungin social game. Like the fact that you just like the fact that it's like Brad probably comes up with the strategy like, oh, we need to pull Brendan boarding blocks, but I think you in this pairing, I think you're like the really like the social force. You're sitting in the tent talking about mungins with Brendan, and more than strategy, more than anything, that's kind of what I think maybe swayed Brendan. Maybe he just like, this. So I think I really am a fan of this pairing of you and Brad, because Brad, you can he's like the more cold strategist, super fan, probably has a spreadsheet somewhere. And I feel like you're the more, like someone who like maybe connects with people easier. And it's just like that social butterfly that, together, I think that's why you guys were so good at, jumping from alliance from people to people, like trying to work with Brendan and then with Charlene and Ben. Like it's really cool to see.
And it was something that I found a lot of comfort in just being able to work with someone like Brad. And so, as I said, we spoke sort of a few times in that post merge, and that a lot of the times that we did speak, it was like really meaningful. So we had a plan, we stuck to it, we didn't dispute, we just be like, yep, cool, let's go ahead and do that. And we both executed. So I mean, I agree with you. Like
at any point, did you ever think like, I need to take Brad out because I'm gonna lose to him? Especially, you just gone through the questions.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a point where I thought I've kind of what I tried to avoid with Aston in him, controlling, and I'm being completely basically riding his coattails, and I thought, oh my god, now I've got a Brad situation where I'm doing the exact same thing. But at that point in time, I thought it was close enough to the end for me to be like, why bother risking shaking that up now when I had said at the very beginning I wanted to work with him? And that actually probably spoke more a little bit about my game of what I said from the very beginning, as opposed to trying to flip that. Like, there's no point in me trying to create this chaos, trying to go against my word from something that I'd said at the very beginning, because it actually it works better for me at that point in time than against me. But you're right. Like it definitely crossed my mind.
You are right. That's how you've been playing. But I actually thought of this exact same question myself a moment before mine, and then I was working through the permutations, and I actually can't see a place where he can offload Brad because Ben's always there, and Ben keeps winning immunity. Like, if you're going to take out Brad, Ben's still beating you at the final tribal council. So you need Brad to get rid of Ben, and there's no real point in taking out Brad while Ben's still there. If you could have got Ben out at 5, then maybe you're thinking about Brad at 4, you know? But while Ben's in the game, the runner-up's trying to make an appearance, Mar. Runner-ups. I just can't see the situation where it would ever have made sense for you to take Brad out because Ben was still there.
Agreed. I absolutely agree with that. And very delicately and very well articulated. That's basically my thought. So like that doesn't make sense for me to do it.
It's so tricky. I feel like I really relate to that situation of being with a pair that, I mean, my pair in my eyes was Michael in my game, and he was my Brad, where I always felt like I was, he might beat me at the end. So I was like, I will have to get rid of him eventually. But then there's like this other block. My Ben was Nick that I thought could also beat. So it's like, it's so tough because you have, it's good to have shields, but as you run out of time to vote them out, you need to choose which ones to vote out and which shields you just like take a risk at the end with. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think there's nothing, I don't think there's anything bad about trying to work with someone and just making sure that you delicately balance along that line of not being too dominant so they see you, they want to try and get rid of you, but also not being too submissive and going with every plan that they have. So there's an equal balance of contribution of strategy and, even like discussions around camp, that there's no going to the very end with them and trying to go like man for man or like person to person and trying to go, there's nothing wrong with that. I think like at least there's going to be some merit in taking, if I don't win, then Brad wins, and that's okay too. So like going head to head against someone who's a good player, I don't think is a bad thing. Like trying to.
I mean, and you were like the ultimate like balanced duo. It took like a tiebreaker for you guys too.
Yeah. We're jumping ahead again. We'll get there. Let's rewind slightly. Episode the 9th one. You guys, I just want to ask this a quick question. You could have just taken out Charlene here and, with a plan to bring Hoppo to the end.
Yes.
But instead you take the risk on the 2-2. What was the thinking there?
Not voting Charlene, you mean?
Yeah. You couldn't do it? You felt it was too hard for you?
Not again. You've done it twice already. Like 3rd time's a charm.
Yeah, but this is after the Alex saved him thing, and then it all became like all emotional.
He's a
he doesn't
good
vote
person
for
now.
after that.
And this is again this is one of these pivotal conversations that I have, and I do remember so vividly that Charlene and I basically stepped out of the game at this point in time, and I know that the game never stops, but I feel like for Charlene and I it did, because we both discussed the Alex thing. We both had like a lot of feelings and emotions regarding that. And then we sort of got to this point in time where I felt like I was incorrectly going for Charlene and rather than going like with her. Like I think I've been trying to go against this person who's such a nice human and I shouldn't be doing that. So why have I?
Well, you should. It's Survivor. You have to go against the nice people.
Hoppo to the end is the way to go here. It's definitely the best strategic move.
I know, but that
poor Hoppo, he was playing it perfectly. He was being the perfect Survivor evil.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like
he was number 5 in 2 pairs. He's like, this is golden.
Yeah, that's
I think Hoppo didn't plan on you being such a good person.
Well, and I don't think anybody really. So go on.
Yeah, well, I think as you say, he didn't plan on that. It made the most sense for him to be brought, and I don't think he saw himself as like a huge threat in the final tribal council either. So he probably thought he's got the final 3 here, and he'll be choosing who comes with him in a way.
Absolutely, and that's like that was probably what was exactly going to occur, except for this one point in time where Charlie and I were having a really frank and honest discussion. So. Like, again, like that's where the game, I think, flipped a little bit, where I was going like towards or against Charlene. And then all of a sudden our games just completely went parallel. We were like in exactly the same headspace, exactly the same position of what we wanted out of this game. And she said to me, look, I'm not going to write your name down like again in this game. And I said, look, I can't do it. Even if it does, end up being like a pretty tough decision. I think what will help me make that easy decision is the fact that I'm not going to write your name down. So Charlene
Again,
and
that
I,
social game, the social game of 10 out of 10.
And it pays off in significant dividends in a bit, but we'll get to that. We go into the final episode, final 4, and here's where your "I'm not good at challenges" shit just goes completely out the window, and someone should have called you for this at Final Travel Council, Brad. But the fact is, this is the most survivory challenge you do the whole game. It's definitely the toughest, with the plank and the throwing and the running back and forth and a really difficult word puzzle. Like, I'm not surprised those clues had to be given out. That was a lot of letters and like a 10-letter word, like, as well as other letters. Like, most people can't do a jumble for 10 letters on a single word. So, like, incredibly tough challenge that you pull out a big win against a big competitor, the immunity beast. You beat the immunity beast. This I couldn't do challenges. You were, in my view, you were foxing. You were doing the Tyson thing from like when he comes back and injures himself, and not showing off your actual prowess.
It came into like that final travel council, that final challenge, and I thought, if there's going to be a moment where I can actually try and go to some kind of my potential, this would be the moment. And fortunately, it worked out to be like a little bit of a strength of mine. Like, planking is, hopefully I'll be able to last a little while there. Throwing, I'm like not too bad at throwing a ball in a bucket, and the word challenge thing, like that just comes down to, like, I don't know, being in the moment and hopefully figuring it out. So I thought, if I'm going to pull something out of my ass, this is going to be the moment to do it. And sure enough, going against Ben, who was on a 3-game win streak, going for his 4th straight, I thought, this is going to be a pretty tough scenario. So channeled the inner Tyson and got it done, which was, thank God.
Who do you think would have gone if say Charlene wins that immunity?
Brad.
It's still Ben, like, or Brad?
It's because I think that point in time, Charlene, it was at that moment that Charlene, I think, decided for her game, she needed to get rid of Ben. But I think if she had the immunity being in that power, I don't know if she would have got rid of Ben. She probably would have felt like that was a pretty good pitch.
What if Ben wins immunity? Is it Brad who goes home, or?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so. You would.
Are in any of these scenarios, are you creating a draw? Are you voting with Brad creating a draw?
Yeah, I definitely would. I would, if I...
To get rid of Ben?
Say Ben,
I would always, I think, there wouldn't be a scenario there where I would get rid of Brad. I would try for a draw and then let, that challenge kind of decide the fate. But, I would always go...
I think I get what you're saying because you're nice, but that probably would have been a fatal decision for you. If either Ben defeats Brad or Brad defeats Ben in a challenge, it's probably the icing on the cake for either of their games.
That's true. That's pretty good. It's a good way to enter that final tribal council, being in like a duel and then coming out on top and be like, I knocked out the king or I knocked out this person. So you probably, I think
it's a bit, which I think is a bit unfair because you won the challenge in the end.
Yeah.
So
look, it's a nonsense thing, and it's not enough by itself. But given the game Ben played, and given the game people seem to perceive Brad was playing, I just feel like it's just another thing they did
like on cherry on top.
Yeah, an already excellent resume.
Yeah, absolutely, and they did. They had like excellent resumes, and particularly Ben. So for me, it was even though I gave Ben a little bit of time to see what he had to pitch in order to either vote Brad or vote him. I gave him a little bit of a little bit of dialogue, and he kind of just reinforced how good he was at speaking. And I was like, okay, your pitch is so good. There's no way I can take you. And considering his resume and his ability in the game, for me it stuck to my plan to keep Brad, but also it stuck I had to get rid of Ben. That was fine.
As the King Challenge Beast himself says, Ben was a challenge beast. That is true. Okay, so I think Ben goes, no one's surprised except for Ben because he's obviously devastated that Charlene voted for him. You can tell. I know her plan is, I need him there. I need him spruiking for me on the jury. She doesn't use that word, but that's the thing. I need him there. I need his vote. I need him to go for me. And he's just very burnt in this moment. I think, by this situation, and that she's not getting what she needs. Last week when we reviewed this final tribal council, we can talk a bit through the questions that you got given. And I said at the start of this show that it's one of the best performances I've seen in any LRG. I think probably the best in all the Australian LRGs. No offense, Ma. The performance here is incredible, and I know, like, it feels to. People said last week when in the chat that you only turned one vote. You turned Kegan's vote, but that was obviously enough, right? But everyone else was pretty much voting where they already were. But what you did for me as an audience is you turned me as an audience as to, I went into this final tribal council probably a little bit unsure on who I think thought deserved to win. I thought they were all three of you were quite deserving. I was probably a bit on the Charlene side, and that's why you got a really interesting, and I probably got ranking the three. You remember at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
But you come in here and you've got Brad's like just the favorite. For whatever reason, he's the favorite. You guys pretty much played the same game for a while, but he's the favorite. People looking at him as the winner. But I think Charlene's going to come in with this great final tribal because she's had an incredible game. It's been an incredible game the whole way. And she clearly just doesn't know how to articulate it in the way to show that group why she was playing such a strong game. And sadly, that's why she gets 0 votes. She doesn't deserve 0 votes, but it's what happens because of the way she hasn't watched a lot of Survivor. I understand. I talked to Dan about it at the time. She hadn't watched a lot. She doesn't know how to really articulate it. You're on the hand of now binge watch 40 seasons or something, as we talked about. And you do an incredible job of running the line between confidence and telling your story without ever being arrogant about it, without overselling it, without putting people down that don't need to be put down, and giving really solid, interesting answers to all questions. Whereas a lot of people's answers, it's sort of like reading from the script. This is my script of what I'm going into with Tribal Council, and this is what I'm going to tell people. Whereas you were more dynamic to the answers. Brad just stuck to his script, and Charlene got a bit blindsided by, I think, some of the questions she was getting and some of the way people were, somewhat assertively aggressive a bit to her. And Ben also obviously feeling very hurt, I think hit her hard. So I feel like you were best able to then rise up. And while you only changed one vote, apparently, you changed the audience's vote in terms of why you were the most deserving player in the game. And I think that's why you sold such a great story at this Tribal Council.
Yeah, Jeremy.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
I think, and I do think, like, you being a bit older than Brad, I think you probably dealt, in workplaces and stuff more. I did see a little bit of like Brad's like rigidity, like with CK saying like his script is like this like fanboy of Survivor who thinks he knows what people want. But I think I could see you were like really thinking like, what does this person want for me? What does this person want for me? And yeah, it was great. The first time I watched this Tribal Council, I couldn't hear a word of it because we were all in Canberra. You had COVID, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's right.
So I had to rewatch this with subtitles because, it was a bit hectic. But I agree with CK. You did a really good job and should be proud of yourself.
I appreciate that. That's really nice. And the whole weekend was pretty tough. And to get to that point in time and just sort of commit to that final Tribal Council and to get such good review and some accolades that makes it a lot worth it. So I appreciate that. That's really nice.
I guess the big question for you is, had you seen Ghost Island?
I had seen it, but I don't think I can recall the exact reference that you're referring to.
Well, Ghost Island is the only season. It's the only season of Survivor where there was a tie at the final Tribal Council,
right?
And it's the only time it's ever happened. And until that happened, no one knew what would happen. Like no one knew the answer. So when that season aired and, it was a tie and then Jeff started reading the votes live and everyone was like, what the hell? And I'm like, this must be a tie. What are they going to do? And then the third place person makes the vote. I'm just wondering if you knew that was going to be what happened when you saw the tie come out. Did you know that Charlene was going to be making that casting vote?
No, it was all happening in front of me and like in a rapid rate that I was just listening to Dan as he was explaining in a tie. It comes to the third member of that final tribal council becoming that final jury member, and it comes down to her vote. And with that being like, with the heart racing and all the adrenaline pumping, it was like, I don't know, it was basically falling on deaf ears. So I really didn't understand still what was going on until it was like, all right, well, Charlene, you take the urn and you've got one part to
How
write.
confident? How confident? Maybe
Yeah.
percentage
Were you
were
Wendell
you?
confident? Wendell was pretty confident that he had Laurel.
Were you confident that Charlene was gonna vote for you? Like, if you had to put a percentage of how sure you were that she would vote for you, not Brad.
I had two arguments which were conflicting. I thought Charlene and I bonded like a lot. In particular that one conversation moving into, I thought I know that is probably going to be somewhat influenced, but then converse to that, we have Brad who's played a really good game, and I thought, well, I think Charlene is going to probably make the decision based on like the game and who probably she perceived, as opposed to like, who do you vote for? Like maybe the good person or the good player. You'd probably go with the good player in this situation, but
you're a good player. Come on.
I think that assumes that you're a bad player, which you're not.
You're not. You're different. I think you're just different players. I think Brad is the strategic robot, and you're more like the, like the heartfelt social
you
social
still
strategist.
play.
Yeah.
You still play the game, and I think you had the better story. And I loved the story for Charlene when she's casting her final vote, and she's like, well, obviously none of these motherfuckers, that's me ad-libbing, none of these motherfuckers on the jury, there it is, respect. It's like, none of these other motherfuckers on the jury respect honesty and genuine game and being a social and nice person, because obviously they didn't vote for her. That's what she's getting at here. But I vote value it, and I'm going to decide who wins this game now. Mm-hmm. And so, Jeremy, this is for you. What a great ending to that season. And I'm sure you now have your special bond with Charlene is probably like a hugely one. Are you like besties now? Has she replaced Janine in your life?
Yeah, it's like, well, Janine's no longer talking to me.
Yeah, I think the winner often represents like the spirit of the season, and I think you very much represent like the spirit of Canberra season 1. Yeah,
absolutely, and that's leading up to that final tribal council. Like, I sort of took a moment to reflect and do a little bit of like, not rehearsing in a way, but some points that I wanted to try and make. And then after making that initial pitch, I felt like I didn't do that all that well. And thankfully I had that time to think, oh my God, like I always criticize all of these Survivor players in the American seasons not making the best pitch they possibly could. And I'm like, why did you say that? Why did you say this? Yeah. And you could have made it so much better. And thankfully I had that moment internally after I'd made that pitch. I feel like I need to do a better job at promoting or at least pitching my game. And so, as it came around and certain questions were asked, I think that sort of helped. And and then I think with my, that's exactly what you said, the story and everything that I tried to do to represent that season of being like a survivor, going through most of the votes, being a genuine person, and hopefully having like really good connections with all these players. And above all, like becoming a really good friend as soon as this game is done. And so that led to that final like Charlene vote. And, I'm grateful that ended up being the case, because I think that the poetic justice, that served that.
Oh, poor Brad, like I do my heart did, like the whole season I was convinced Brad was the winner, especially because he told me to my face that he'd won. So it's a big shock to me, but I did now, watching it back, you're like, of course Jeremy won this season.
No, I appreciate that. And I think the the whole experience was really, really good. It was fun. It was awesome.
Would you ever play again?
Yeah,
you would. Yeah, awesome.
Mars on the record saying she's never playing again. That's Mars' like official position.
I'll play it. Winners, bring all the winners and
a winners, man. Yeah.
Me and Jeremy dominating.
We're catching up with 11 of them through this process. So how many you need? 16, 5 more. You can put it together.
Let's go.
Just don't have to be, as long as you have to focus on the gender balance, I think you'll be out of 16. No, we're gonna go. We're currently at one boy and no, 2 boys and 1 girl. But I know that it skews at some point. But I think it might be better gender balance than actual Survivor. So there you go.
What is the
something
balance?
maybe that's something we could see in the future.
You need to watch every single LRG, Jeremy, and find out.
All right.
We've already done coverage.
I mean, Canberra's perfect. We're like 1-1, so we're perfectly balanced right now.
We've done the coverage of Melbourne 1, which had a male winner, and the coverage of Backyard 1, which had a female winner.
Yeah, great. Perfectly balanced. Nothing will ever disrupt that.
So thank you so much for coming on, Jeremy, and talking it through. I don't know how much you did to refresh your memory from something you did a few years ago, but you clearly have all the thoughts. I'm not surprised. I remember everything that I ever did in the game that I played, and I didn't even win. So I'm sure it's all still there. So thank you so much. And Ma, who I only called into this on like the last minute.
I had to come for Jeremy. I'll go. I'll do anything for Jeremy.
Have you got encyclopedic knowledge of Canberra 1? When did you last watch this?
I love the Canberra 1. I watched it before I went to play Canberra 2.
It was like 2 years ago.
I'm obsessed with Jeremy. He knows that. He knows everything.
I'm reading off 17 pages of notes I made when I binge watched this 2 weeks ago. Like, you seem to know everything that happened.
I'm just really good at Survivor. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I haven't seen. To be fair, I've only seen a few LRGs, and this was the second one I ever watched, and and I thought I could not believe how many tide. I think this should have been like Survivor Canberra tide votes.
The votes are crazy in this season.
Yeah,
every
it's
single
insane.
vote. As I said, what makes this season so great is the strategy and all the really, really interesting votes that are happening every time. The thing that brings it down is everyone is too fucking nice to each other. Like,
and the rain.
That's my balanced view on the season. We come from Mel here. We all love Jeremy. And look, I think everyone does love Jeremy. I've just met Jeremy, but I love Jeremy. And I was talking to Dan about this, and he said, because I was talking about your win and we're chatting a bit about the game. And he said, like, when you meet, I'm like, Jeremy his social game must be so strong. And he's like, when you meet him, like, even when you meet him virtually, you'll get that warm vibe, that social vibe that people just like his vibe and want to stick with him. But you're also very non-threatening in a way. Like, people like Ben, but people found Ben very threatening as a player, I'm sure. Like, you have that way, but people should be wary of you in a game sense, but they're not. And that's like the perfect storm of a Survivor player, really, isn't it?
I appreciate that. Yeah. And that's really nice to hear when you get such good compliments that way. But yeah, it's really good to be part of like a really good community as well. So I think it being so comfortable with everyone makes that easier to be myself. It's kind of good.
Well, this finishes our interview with Jeremy. We still have 2 more episodes with our Survivor Canberra 1 coverage. Next week, the tea party, as you mentioned. I will message Ben after this show. Let's get him on as well. The crowd has spoken.
You have to.
We will then have the chat with Dan and maybe Liv, not sure, hopefully, and to talk about the production of the season, how it all came about for Dan and his team when they made the first season, as well as the votes. Go and vote if you haven't. This is one of the most interesting ones I think we've had in terms of who is the MVP, who is the best pre-merge boot. I've got an opinion, and generally my opinion is the same as the masses. But here we're seeing a bit of a mix because there's a lot of strong actual contenders for all these different awards in this season. So it's really interesting. So get in and vote. And then, as I said, December, we keep the party rolling with the ORCA coverage of all 11 seasons moving into season 4. We will be looking at Backyard Survivor Season 3 Exile. So make sure if you haven't watched that, go and watch it. And then in the new year, we'll have a couple more and then start going down the top 5 as voted by you. So everyone, we're covering 6 without telling you where they were ranked because no one deserves to be on the bottom. We're all wonderful. But then the top 5 counting down, which will start sometime in the new year. I'm really looking forward to that. Thank you, Jeremy, again for being with us. Thank you, Ma, for being here on such short notice. It was such a great combo to have the 2 Canberra winners. And thank you to everyone who engaged in the chat, the contestants and the people here that are just enjoying the show. And also thank you to everyone who listens to this at a later point, whether you're exercising or whenever you watch it. If you didn't watch it live, thank you. We really appreciate you listening and continuing to support our program and the Australian LRG community, which we all love very much. So thank you all.
Great.
Bye.